Well, welcome to another Trekzone Conversation. I'm very excited by today's guest. He's back with me for another chat. Third time on the show, Mr. Glenn Nagel from the Canberra Deep Space Communication Complex is going to chat about a makeover right after the opener.
Across Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts and YouTube, this is the 8th season of a Trekzone Conversation with Matt Miller.
And a very warm welcome, a very warm Trekzone welcome back to you, Glenn.
It's great to be here once again.
Now, you're with me because something exciting is happening in Canberra at your beautiful complex down there in Tidbinbilla.
Yeah, so right now we're doing a major upgrade on Deep Space Station 43, which is our 70-metre antenna, the largest here in the Southern Hemisphere. It's still one of the largest antennas in the world used for spacecraft communications. An 11th-month project to bring this 48-year-old antenna into a whole new generation of equipment that will support countless missions into the future, hopefully including those next steps on the surface of the moon and the first steps on Mars.
When we were down there in 2016, can't believe that's 4 years ago, you were talking about how the solar system is getting so busy with radio traffic, and especially around Mars with so many rovers going on. So you were expanding then as well with some new dishes. Is 43 needing this upgrade to keep pace with all the new tech that's coming in as well?
Yeah, well, like anything that gets a little bit older, me included, we all need a little bit of a facelift from time to time, a bit of a complete medical checkup. So 43 has been operating on pretty much the same transmitter receiver system as it's had for, well, probably the last 30 years since the last major upgrade. And that equipment was becoming slightly less than 100% reliable. It was taking a lot more tender loving care to keep it going. And again, just like me getting up in the morning, it gets a little bit hard to do sometimes. So 43 was experiencing those same sort of things. So the decision was taken about 5 years ago now to start the planning process to do these upgrades. And probably the major change happening to the antenna is the installation of two new high power transmitters. So at the moment we have generally a 20 kilowatt transmitter and a 200 kilowatt transmitter in the antenna. We rarely use the 200 kilowatt. It's primarily for the Voyager spacecraft. But with the technology moving along constantly, we're now installing a new 80 kilowatt transmitter to replace the 20 kilowatt. And it sounds like a step back, but we're putting in a 100 kilowatt transmitter rather than the 200 kilowatt. And the 100 kilowatt is more than adequate to support spacecraft like the Voyager missions as they continue to head, off into interstellar space. So that's the major change. But there's a lot of other changes too, upgrades to electrical equipment, water pumping systems, air conditioning systems, the hydraulic systems and so forth. So it's really getting a top to bottom makeover of systems, and that will really keep this 48-year-old antenna running for many, many decades to come.
What are some of the things that 43 has listened to over all those years?
In fact, its very first mission that it did when the antenna came online in 1972 was actually Apollo 17. So it's quite lovely here at the site. Well, we have the original honeysuckle antenna here, our 26-metre antenna. It received the very first pictures from Apollo 11 and Armstrong stepping on the moon. And we also have the 70-metre antenna, which received pictures from the very last mission for humans, currently at least, to walk on the surface of the moon. But it's tracked pretty much every mission that's ever gone out there. Dozens of missions to go to Mars and out to the outer planets across the solar system, Jupiter, Saturn, and so forth. Recent times supporting missions like Cassini and its 13-year Odyssey orbiting Saturn and its moons, and of course New Horizons, which made that historic encounter with Pluto in 2015. And we're still downlinking data right as we speak from the New Horizons mission. It's taking a little bit longer because we don't have the capabilities of the 70 metre while it's in this downtime, but we're still downlinking its data from New Horizons from the encounter it did with the Kuiper Belt object Arakuth just a couple of years ago now, it seems. But all that data is taking over 20 months to get back from the spacecraft. So really, when you think of a mission that's been out there across the solar system, it's probably been Deep Space Station 43 to be involved.
That is absolutely incredible and really special as well to have something that is continuing service for so long.
This is what the tracking station is all about. I mean, we're here making history every single day. I love getting phone calls from my nieces and nephews saying, Uncle Glenn, did you see, these pictures that came in from Mars today? And I was sort of like, yes, and they came in through here in Canberra where I work. And they're all like, really? So very exciting. And I think all of us sort of get caught up in that idea that we are making those historic discoveries every day, not only with all the spacecraft that are out there and dozens of them from many, many nations around the world, but also a little bit of work in the radio astronomy field and assisting telescopes like the CSIRO's Parkes Radio Telescope and getting data back about fast radio bursts or the black hole at the core of our galaxy and other galaxies out there in the universe. So it's all very exciting work exploring space.
Dr. Brad Tucker and I are talking about, seemingly on a very regular basis, Aussie astronomers, radio astronomers leading the way, leading teams in new discoveries. Just a couple of weeks ago, learning about a ring galaxy, learning about these fast radio bursts, as you talked about. It is incredible, and now crewed spaceflight is returning to our little corner of the solar system and beyond in the next decade or so. And Canberra will be playing a big part of that, and Deep Space 43 as well, of course.
Yeah, so for the recent mission by SpaceX and NASA taking astronauts up to the International Space Station, it was our sister network, we call the Space Network. We're the Deep Space Network, but we also have the Near Earth Network and the Space Network. So Space Network basically provides communication to those craft in low Earth orbit, like the International Space Station and the crew vehicle that just recently went up. Of course, for us at the Deep Space Network, that's everything sort of beyond 100,000 kilometers. So when those missions head off to go return to the moon in just maybe the next few years, then it certainly will be our antennas right here playing a key role. And that's one of the most important reasons why we're doing these upgrades to Deep Space Station 43 and the other antennas here on site, which will also get some new capabilities with some higher power transmitter receive and more sensitive receiver systems so that we can support those human space flights over the next coming years and into the next decade when we're heading off eventually, hopefully, to the planet Mars.
And what sort of data rates could we expect? Like when we finally land, or when Artemis lands on the moon, let's come a little bit forward. I was going to talk about Mars, but Artemis missions on the moon, can we expect a HD live stream of those astronauts taking those first steps again?
Oh, absolutely. Rather than the flickery black and white images of the 60s and 70s, yeah, this will be full color, high definition. Probably the limiting capability for Apollo was really the low quality of the camera. They were only a sort of a 15 frames per second rate. It was very low bandwidth. There was a lot of relaying of signals, which degraded the overall picture. But now with the capabilities that we have, and we'll have more powerful transmitters on the spacecraft at the moon, we'll have better capabilities, more sensitivity with the antenna systems that we have now, then yeah, we'll be seeing it in high definition, glorious color, maybe even 3D. They have talked about sending stereo camera systems so that we could all sit there and actually experience it, almost like we're there with the astronauts. But for even higher capabilities, we're going to have to eventually probably move out of radio. So when we go off to places like Mars, there will still be some limitations with that. It'll still be color, it'll still be very good definition, but we want to actually move perhaps into the optical range of communication in the future rather than just radio. We get much higher bandwidths, get more data back, and improve the communications we do for those astronauts.
What's the sort of technical change in that from radio waves to optical waves?
Well, it actually requires an entirely new receiving system. So we'll still be using dishes, But rather than just being a metal surface, gathering and reflecting those radio waves into a receiver, we'll have to have antennas that have optical receiving capabilities, sort of creating a giant mirror on the surface of these antennas, collecting as much of that light wave as possible and putting that into very sensitive optical receivers. There'll be also some complexities of just the processing of that data. Unlike the way we're doing communication optically here on Earth, it's immediate point to point, through that fiber. For off to somewhere like Mars, say, then your receivers have to be working at wavelengths that we don't currently use. The processing is going to have to deal with the interference of just other optical wavelengths, the same way as we have to filter out radio waves here. We'll have to sort of filter out the universe's optical wavelengths in some way. And then you've got another little thing that also gets in the way, and that can actually just be something as simple as cloud cover. So, if we're using wavelengths, say, somewhere in the part of the, sort of in the part of the infrared spectrum, then clouds are going to be an issue, just water in the atmosphere. So having actual antennas at different locations where you can pick and choose the cloudless spot, say, we can then use those antennas to do receiving. And we're doing some studies on that right now, looking at the way cloud cover is, particularly here across the ACT, the Canberra region. We've actually got pretty good weather, despite the fact that it gets quite cold here. Our cloud cover days are relatively low compared to a lot of the other sort of capital cities. But we still want to have some coverage. So looking at maybe locations somewhere in central Australia where there is already some antenna facilities that we could, sort of piggyback on and use.
Fantastic, Glenn. Well, some exciting times ahead for Tidbinbilla. Once again, coming to the fore of our crewed missions. And Aussies can be pretty proud that a lot of these communications are coming through Australia and being relayed through to NASA and beyond, and helping with astronomical findings as well.
Yeah, it's something that as a nation, we don't tend to think of ourselves as a spacefaring nation or playing the game with the major space agencies around the world. But we have an incredibly capable industry here, incredibly capable scientists, astronomers, technicians, engineers, all doing great work every single day. And I just think of the discoveries that have been happening in recent times with projects like the CSIRO's ASCAP antennas out in Western Australia, helping us learn a little bit more about those fast radio bursts, and then detecting through those observations where all that sort of missing matter that we've been looking for a long time exists. And that's exciting, just to think we're making fundamental changes in our understanding of the universe that's happening right here in our country, and we really are leading the world in that area. So there's a very bright future for that next generation of scientists and astronomer, that kid who's out there right now looking up at missions like the SpaceX NASA flight recently, or seeing those wonderful pictures from telescopes like Hubble and others, and thinking, I want to be a part of that. And they can do it right in this country.
Fantastic, Glenn. Well, hopefully quarantine lifts and we can come check out Deep Space 43 when its makeover is complete in about a year's time.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing everybody again. And don't forget, you can always just check out all the latest news. We're keeping people updated via our social media channels. So come and check it out in a virtual sense until you can come and see us in real everyday life.
And those social media channels, where can people find you?
Yeah, if you look for us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, on at Canberra DSN, and you can follow us along there, or just check on our website at cdscc.nasa.gov.
Fantastic, Glenn. And of course, Trekzone all over social media as well. Just search for Trekzone. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Tumblr as well, which is absolutely fantastic, Glenn. It's awesome it's always awesome to bring you back on the show and chat science and chat Tidbinbilla. It's brilliant. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for having a Trekzone conversation, and we'll catch you again soon.
Thanks very much.